How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation, and in today's video I have 3 topics to cover, starting out with how any device you own is about to become a PS5. Then we're going to talk about why exactly PS5 gamers are saying good luck with that to a big publisher. And finally, it looks like people are at the breaking point when it comes to the amount of remakes we've been getting this generation. But jumping into the first news story here, Sony's been on a weird cadence lately where whenever they release a PS5 firmware update, they announce the new update that's coming next, basically within the first couple of days after the update. I think this is really cool because it shows that they're constantly working on improving the PS5, which is a level of support that you don't traditionally see with consoles or really anything this many years after they kind of come out. You know, they do the big upgrades for the first few years, then they hit a point where it's quote unquote done. They move on to the next generation, but now we're in this weird space where generation lines are blurred. They're going to keep the PS5 around well into the PS6 generation, and if they could keep the PS4 around, I bet they would. So the feature this next update is bringing is amazing if you have multiple PS5s or you have different devices, because it's going to allow your DualSense to remember multiple connections at the same time. So currently, when I use my DualSense Edge, I use it on my PC, I use it on my PS5, I use it on my PS5 Pro. That's 3 different devices. Every time I want to switch back to another device, I have to either plug it in or hold the PlayStation button and the share button until it rapidly flashes. I have to connect it to Bluetooth. It's just a cumbersome process, and there are multiple controllers out there, including the original Switch Pro controller, that have the ability to remember multiple devices. So now, once I have these devices connected, if I'm close to one and one's off, like my PC sits next to my PS5, if the PS5 is off and I turn on the controller, it'll remember my PC. I'll be able to flip between all of my different consoles. Another interesting thing this will help out with, though, is a Switch 2. I know a lot of people are not buying the Switch 2 because it's overpriced and the games are overpriced, but a lot of people who have PS5s do buy Nintendo Switches. Nintendo Switch is basically no one's primary console. It's like their additional console. They buy after they already own a PS5 just to play first-party Nintendo games, and the interesting thing about the Switch 2 is the DualSense is fully supported. So if you put it into Bluetooth pairing mode and connect it to the Switch 2, you can play pretty much any game out there. Now, I don't have Lego Horizon Adventures. I think that's really the only Sony published game that's available on the Switch 2, but if you do have it, please let me know down in the comments whether or not DualSense features work in that game. It would be awesome if for some of these games that they are releasing on the Switch 2 platform, if like once you connect the DualSense, they leave the files in place to allow you to use the DualSense and all of its features with that game. Because, you know, you're giving Sony money for the game, they should support everyone who's playing it. I love features like this, and I've been waiting for it to come to the DualSense. I'm pretty sure I've done a few videos where I specifically requested this feature because of the Pulse Explorer and Pulse Elite. Both of those headsets allow you to connect to multiple devices. So if you use the USB dongle with the Pulse Elite on your PS5, you can connect it to Bluetooth at the same time on your phone. So when I'm grinding out the same boss for the 50th hour in Elden Ring Night Rain, that's only half a joke. I beat the first boss, the 3-headed dog, in basically 2 days, and then I was stuck on the second boss, the big T-Rex, the gaping jaw. I was stuck on him for a little over a week, and now I'm at 55 hours of playtime, and the game's only been out like 3 days past a week. So that's how addicted I am to Night Rain. So when I'm like in the map for the 50th time just going after this boss, I'll put on podcasts. My favorite gaming podcast right now is the Game Business one from Christopher Dring. He partnered up with Jeff Keighley in the Game Awards and Summer Game Fest to do really deep dives on game industry analysis. So if you're looking for a new podcast to listen to while you're playing, can't recommend that one enough. But having those features is so excellent. I'm glad they're bringing it to the DualSense, and not just the DualSense Edge. It's coming to the regular DualSense as well. So this is just all around a massive win for Sony, and I really appreciate it. But next up, let's talk about why PS5 gamers are saying good luck with that. So we already covered this a little bit earlier in the week, but $80 games are here, specifically from Xbox and Nintendo. You're going to see it from third-party publishers on PlayStation, but for the time being, Sony is holding out and keeping big games like Death Stranding 2 and Ghost of Yotei, and probably everything until 2026 at $70. I appreciate it on the one hand. On the other hand, they shouldn't be $70. They did not justify justify that price increase, but like knowing that other publishers are charging $80, it is nice to pay $70 on PlayStation because you're getting the best performance on the PS5 Pro and largely on the PS5 as well. So you're getting the best experience for less money. I like that system. One new update to the story that I kind of neglected to mention the last time I talked about this is that shockingly, Xbox is more of a problem in this realm than Nintendo is. Nintendo is looking at their games on a case-by-case basis. So yes, at launch, Mario Kart World is $80 if you don't buy it in the $50 bundle with the actual console, but a brand new game, Donkey Kong Bonanza, is only $70, and there's going to be $60 games. Bravely Default, the Flying Fairy Remaster HD, whatever Square Enix is calling it, that's a $50 or $40 game. So it runs the whole gamut in terms of how much games are going to cost. But it turns out on Xbox's side, any AAA game they release is going to be $80 from now on. The big one that they're doing first is the Outer Worlds 2, and that specifically is the game that's making PS5 players say good luck with that. And I understand it. I had the exact same sentiment in my last video where, yeah, it looks like a big improvement over the original Outer Worlds, but it's still the same formula, it seems like, as the Outer Worlds. You know, not a true full-on open world, small open areas that are interconnected either with your spaceship or on the actual map. It's going to be very dialogue heavy. There's going to be more combat, but it's still not entirely the full focus. I think this game is going to perform and look about the same as Avowed, which was not an $80 game. And just knowing what kind of franchise this is, I don't think it justifies $70. The first game I think was $50 when it came out. Hell, it might have even been $40. My mind is all blended together from all these different game prices, but still, it wasn't even a full price game in the first one. So I think this is something that needs to be reevaluated by Microsoft big time, because people are just saying good luck with that. Like, good luck charging $80 because we're not going to show up for it. And I respect that. I'm not showing up for $80 for that game. It's not worth it. Now, one argument that I've seen that I think holds water in some ways, but doesn't in others, is that they're just trying to encourage people to play on Game Pass. And yeah, that works on specifically Xbox hardware, like the Xbox Series X and S, because you can pay $80 for a game that arguably doesn't justify it. But you could just subscribe to Game Pass for like $20 a month and play it day one. You could pay for the early access to get the Ultimate Edition and play a few days early. I guess it makes sense in that scenario. Like, if you're the biggest Outer Worlds fan in the entire universe, like it's your new favorite thing, it's totally replaced your love for Fallout. Yeah, maybe it's worth it for you to not spend $80 and just subscribe to Game Pass and get the ultimate upgrade to play early. But on PC, where Game Pass is, I mean, yeah, you kind of could subscribe to Game Pass, but then you'd have to use the Xbox app, which is a resource hog, doesn't work right, and doesn't allow you to actually control your games in the same way as Steam. I mean, most people on PC see Steam as the first party storefront on PC. They see it as the PlayStation Store of a PC platform. Getting them to play on other launchers like Epic Game Store, the Xbox app, Ubiplay, and EA Play. I mean, like, there's a whole meme where when a game comes out on Epic, it doesn't exist to PC players. They consider the year later when it comes to Steam as the official launch. So again, good luck getting people to not just pay $80 or not buy it at all on Steam instead of subscribing to Game Pass. But then you got to look at the biggest potential audience for this game, PlayStation players. Like, there's the most PlayStations out there. This game is not announced for Nintendo Switch 2. The biggest market possible for the Outer Worlds 2 is the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro, and there's no Game Pass. There's no way to subscribe to Game Pass to get these games, and the only option is to wait for a sale or pay $80 or more to get that early access if you want to get the Ultimate Edition or whatever. So they don't have another option, and so it just doesn't make sense. Like, are they trying to convince people to go out and spend $700 on the 2TB Series X? Are they trying to get people to buy a Series S for a couple $100 used or something like that to play on Game Pass? This just doesn't feel thought out in an organic way. I'm sure their pie in the sky dream is that Sony's going to say, well, people aren't paying for their $80 games. We may as well let them put Game Pass on there to keep people engaged with PlayStation. But that's just a dumb move for Sony, because that cheapens their games. If people know they can subscribe to Game Pass and play every Xbox game for free, they're going to start demanding it from Sony, and Sony's probably aware of that fact, so they're just staying away from it altogether. There's probably like a 99% chance that we will never see Game Pass on the PlayStation 5 platform. I'm saying 99 because like there is a 1% chance it could happen. And another huge thing that Microsoft doesn't seem to be taking into account is that there's hype levels for games. Like, Avowed is a new IP that had a lot of controversy when it came out. out. And even after all that controversy, like if you set it to the side, it was at most like an 8 out of 10 game. Like it was a very generic, good looking, well playing open world game, but it wasn't doing anything genuinely new. Like most of the combat scenarios and like being able to combine a gun and a sword, or like a sword and a spell, and swap between different loadouts, that was done in 2007 by BioShock, for example. I mean, it's a little more advanced, but it's like the same thing. The point I'm making is it's not doing anything genuinely new. And it was kind of mismarketed in the sense that whether they said it or not, from the initial reveal trailer, people saw this as a Skyrim style game, and they just didn't do enough work to tell people going into it that it wasn't Skyrim like. And I mean, cynically, you could look at it and say, well, maybe they just didn't do it on purpose, because if people think it's like Skyrim, they're more likely to buy it. I just don't think Microsoft understands the value of games. Like some of them definitely feel like they're worth $80. I mean, Night Rain, I would have paid $70 for after playing it, but I think it was smart to make it $40 because it's mostly reused assets and it's an online multiplayer game first and foremost. So like charging $40 for it means you'll get a lot more sales out of the gate. It would have invited a lot of controversy if it was $70, but after playing it, I would have gladly paid $70 because again, 55 hours of content and I'm on the 3rd boss out of 7. That's a lot of bang for your buck. But yeah, you got to read the tea leaves on the games you're putting out, and any way you slice it. I mean, even if The Outer Worlds 2 is the best it can possibly be, it's never going to be a game that people are willing to pay $80 for, just because it's a sequel to a game that was cheaper and has a lot of baggage in the sense that it was advertised as the new Fallout from the creators of Fallout New Vegas. It was like really tying itself to Fallout, and then it was really nothing like Fallout at the end of the day. But yeah, speaking of gamers being fed up, let's talk about the remake situation, because one game that I wasn't expecting to make this whole problem hit ahead actually did, and that's Persona 4's remake. So Atlas is kind of like a huge offender in this situation, because I mean, Persona 5 came out on PS3 in Japan, then it came out on PS4 here, then it came out on PS5 with the Royal Edition. That's 3 iterations of the same game. There's tons of spin-offs. They remade Persona 3, they're remaking Persona 4. It's been a long time since Persona 5 came out, so people are like, where the hell is Persona 6? Why aren't you working on Persona 6? And when they saw the Persona 4 remake, and it looks like it's very early on into development, people were like, what are you doing? Why are you continually remaking these games instead of working on Persona 6? Now, thankfully, Atlas came out and said, we are working on Persona 6. We're just doing this in the meantime to build up funds to fund Persona 6. And Persona 4 is a great game. Like, it got a remake already. The Vita version was a remake called Persona 4 Golden, and then they released that on other consoles. And I honestly think that's good enough for what we need out of this game. But still, it is a little weird that they're spending so much time and energy on remakes. And then Capcom, of course, in the past generation, I mean, they remade Resident Evil 2, they remade Resident Evil 3, they remade Resident Evil 4, they teased a remake of 5 kind of with the End of 4 remake. Like, there's crazy stuff going on in the world of Capcom. There's remakes coming out from everyone, and people are just generally fed up with it. And I understand, but like, as long as the publishers are making new games at the same rate that they are currently making them without the remakes, I don't really see a huge problem with it. There's tons of games from old generations that are really hard to go back and play, specifically the PS3 generation. And I know there's people out there who are like, oh, the fog is in the wrong place in Silent Hill 2. I'm gonna go loot a building. It's like, I'm not on board with that. I think there are PS2 games that look fine remade. They even did it with Resident Evil 4 because they made the story better. People were mad about that. And it's like, Resident Evil 4 is my favorite game of all time. Like, if I had a gun to my head right now and they were like, what's your favorite game? I wouldn't even have to think about it. I'd say Resident Evil 4. And even I, the biggest Resident Evil 4 fan in the world, will tell you straight up, I am never playing the original version of Resident Evil 4 again. I've played it 25 times between all the different consoles that it's been released on. Like, Capcom really got lucky with never catching strays for how many times they released Resident Evil 4, because everyone was focused on Bethesda re-releasing Skyrim. I think Skyrim is tied with how many times Resident Evil 4 has been released, and even with that in mind, I think they perfected it with the remake. That is the ultimate perfect version of RE4 because it brought along all the original content. You got the main game, you got the Mercenaries mode, which was better than the original, and you got a much better version of Separate Ways. I don't see what there is to be mad about when it comes to that remake. But if these remakes are delaying the mainline games, then I think it's a huge problem, but I understand why people are fed up. I'm just personally not. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in this one. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.